Savitri, Book 7, the Book of Yoga, Canto 2, the Parable of the Search for the Soul. But all is there, even God's opposites. He is a little front of nature's works, a thinking outline of a cryptic force. All she reveals in him that is in her. Her glories walk in him and her darknesses. Man's house of life holds not the gods alone. There are occult shadows. There are tenebrous powers, inhabitants of life's ominous nether rooms, a shadowy world's stupendous denizens, a careless guardian of his nature's powers. Man harbors dangerous forces in his house. The Titan and the Fury and the Jinn lie bound in the subconscious cavern pit, and the beast grovels in his antroden. Dire mutterings rise and murmur in their drowse. Insurgent sometimes raises its huge head, a monstrous mystery lurking in life's deeps, the mystery of dark and fallen worlds, the dread visages of the adversary kings. The dreadful powers held down within his depths become his masters or his ministers. Enormous, they invade his bodily house, can act in his acts, infest his thought and life. Inferno surges into the human air and touches all with a perverting breath. Grave forces like a thin miasma creep, stealing through chinks in his closed mansion's doors, discoloring the walls of upper mind, in which he lives his fair and specious life, and leave behind a stench of sin and death. Not only rise in him perverse drifts of thought and formidable, formless influences, but there come presences and awful shapes, tremendous forms and faces mount dim steps and stare at times into his living rooms, or called up for a moment's passionate work, lay a dire custom's claim upon his heart. Aroused from sleep, they can be bound no more. Afflicting the daylight and alarming night, invading at will his outer tenement, the stark gloom's grisly, dire inhabitants, mounting into God's light, all light perturb. All they have touched or seen, they make their own. In nature's basement lodge, mind's passages fill, disrupt thought's links and musing sequences, break through the soul's stillness with a noise and cry, or they call the inhabitants of the abyss, invite the instincts to forbidden joys, a laughter wake of dread demoniac mirth, and with nether riot and revel shake life's floor. impotent to quell his terrible prisoners. Appalled, the householder, helpless, sits above. Taken from him, his house is his no more. He is bound and forced, a victim of the play, or allured, joys in the mad and mighty din. His nature's dangerous forces have arisen, and hold at will a rebel's holiday. Aroused from the darkness where they crouched in the depths, prisoned from the sight, they can be held no more. His nature's impulses are now his lord's. Once quelled, or wearing specious names and vests, infernal elements, demon powers are there. Man's lower nature hides these awful guests. Their vast contagion grips sometimes man's world. An awful insurgence overpowers man's soul. In house and house, the huge uprising grows. Hell's companies are loosed to do their work. Into the earthways they break out from all doors, invade with bloodlust and the will to slay, and fill with horror and carnage God's fair world. Death and his hunters stalk a victim earth. The terrible angel smites at every door. An awful laughter mocks at the world's pain, and massacre and torture grin at heaven. All is the prey of the destroying force. Creation rocks and tremble top and base. This evil nature, housed in human hearts, a foreign inhabitant, a dangerous guest, the soul that harbors it, it can dislodge, expel the householder, possess the house. An opposite potency, contradicting God, a momentary evil's almightiness, has straddled the straight path of nature's acts. It imitates the Godhead it denies, puts on his figure, and assumes his face. A Manichaean creator and destroyer, this can abolish man, annul his world. But there is a guardian power. There are hands that save. Calm eyes divine regard the human scene. All the world's possibilities in man are waiting as the tree waits in its seed. His past lives in him. It drives his future's pace. His presence acts, fashion his coming fate. The unborn gods hide in his house of life. The demons of the unknown overshadow his mind, casting their dreams into live molds of thought. The molds in which his mind builds out its world. His mind creates around him its universe. All that has been renews in him its birth. All that can be is figured in his soul. Issuing in deeds its scores on the roads of the world, obscure to the interpreting reason's guess, lines of the secret purpose of the gods.